I'm going to start working with equations that have exponents on them. So before we start, let's review. If we have a positive real number, how many real square roots does it have? Remember we said that it has two. It has a positive square root and a negative square root. So 2. And then every negative number has how many real square roots? Well, remember we can't take a square root of a negative number, so the answer is none. Because of this property, we can say that when we take the square root of a square, we get the plus root and the negative root, as long as x is positive. So instead of saying the positive number and the negative number, we can use the plus or minus sign, which is the plus sign with the minus sign right underneath it. So let's look at this example. X squared is equal to 16. So to solve for x, we're going to undo the square by taking the square root. And when we do that, we get the square root of x squared equals plus or minus, because remember, when you take a square root, you get two answers, the plus answer and the negative answer. So plus or minus the square root of 16. Well, when you take the square root of a square, you are just left with x, because the square root undoes the square. And then the square root of 16 is 4. So your answer for x is equal to plus 4, but also negative 4. So positive 4, but also negative 4. And the reason that that works is because positive 4 squared is 16, and also negative 4 squared is 16, because negative 4 times negative 4 is positive 16. So that's why we can get the answer plus or minus 4. So anytime you solve an equation of the form x squared equals a, and a is a positive number, then your answer is plus or minus the square root of a. So let's do another example. X squared equals 49. So we're going to square root both sides. And when we square root both sides, we get a plus answer and a minus answer. So plus or minus. So the square root of 49 is 7. So our answer is x equals plus or minus 7. Now let's look at this one. Before we can square root both sides, we have to isolate the exponent. So that minus 4 is a problem. So we're going to add 4 to both sides first. And when we do, we end up with x squared equals 1. Now we can take the square root of both sides, giving us plus or minus the square root of 1, which is just plus or minus 1. Let's try another one. This one is a two-step problem. So we add 12 first, and we end up with 3x squared equals 30. Now we have to get rid of the 3. And since that 3 is being multiplied, to undo it, we're going to divide. So we get x squared equals 10. Now to square root both sides, we get plus or minus the square root of 10. And since 10 is not a perfect square, we can just leave it as plus or minus the square root of 10. Let's do x squared plus 21 equals 12. Well, to solve, we're going to subtract 21 from both sides, and we get x squared equals negative 9. Remember that a negative number does not have any square roots. So when it says plus or minus the square root of negative 9, we already know that that's a problem. That means there's no real solution. You can't take the square root of a negative number. Why don't you try this problem on your own? X squared equals 25. Pause the video and then tell me what you get. You should have gotten x equals plus or minus 5, because the square root of 25 is 5, but when you take a square root, you get two answers. Try this one. Remember, solve for y squared first. You should have subtracted 100 from both sides, so you would have ended up with y squared equals 49. And then when you take the square root of 49, you get plus or minus 7. Try this one. Remember, divide both sides by 4 first. So this one, if you divide by 4, you should have gotten y squared equals 36. And when you take the square root of both sides, you'll get plus or minus 6. Try this one. This is a two-step. Remember, take care of the plus 15 first, and then take care of the times 3. All right, so if you take care of the 15 first, you would have 9 minus 15, which is negative 6. And then divide by 3, you get negative 2. And then the square root of negative 2, well, that's an issue. You can't take the square root of a negative number, which means there's no real solution. Go ahead and try this one. So you subtract 4 first, giving you 2x squared equals 32. Then you divide by 2, and 32 divided by 2 is 16. And then the square root of 16 is plus or minus 4. Go ahead and try this one. Make sure that you take care of that times 2 first because it's on the outside of parentheses. So if you divide both sides by 2, you would have gotten x squared plus 4 equals 18. Then you subtract 4, and you get x squared equals 14. So now you square root both sides, and you get plus or minus the square root of 14. And since 14 is not a perfect square, you can just leave it as plus or minus square root of 14. All right, go ahead and try your own problems now.